So what is your issue?
Just look at the cover. I'm just going to show you the cover. That is how I felt reading the book the whole time.
Ria,
Hello.
it's amazing to have you here
Thank you.
because you sent me your children's books like serendipitously after an event, and then I took them to my son who's like completely just into like Ninja Turtles and like Marvel superheroes. You get what I'm saying? Even though he likes to read a lot, and I was like, I'm gonna feel bad if he just does not read them, and then I have to message her and say, by the way, he liked them,
But they were fine.
but no, he actually really loved, and you're actually the first children's author that we have on the show. So thank you
Amazing.
so much for being
Amazing.
here. Before we get into like the art of writing for children, as a young person, what was the experience of reading for you?
So I grew up in Bombay,
Yeah.
in India, and it was very interesting. I was always a reader because then I was an English teacher and then I'm a writer, so very much.
Yes.
Started at a very young age. But what was interesting was when we were growing up, we really didn't have many Indian characters because we didn't have many YA Indian authors. So lots of stuff that I read growing up was Nancy Drew, Secret Seven,
The classic.
Enid Blyton. Yeah, very much the
A
classics.
famous five, right? That's really
Yes. So we never saw, I loved reading, but I never saw myself or any character like me in any book growing up. So I didn't know that was possible. But now, I don't know, being an adult, consciously wanting to change that, it's like, for this generation of kids, myself included, there need to be Indian characters in young books for representation.
Yeah, because I think when people see themselves in the characters, there's more affinity and the messages kind of pass a lot better.
And they want to read it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, when you've got computers and video games and this and that, that's the struggle in the first place. So,
Trying to keep that attention span, believe me, I know it.
yeah.
So what would you say kind of put you on the path of being like, what book did you read that kind of inspired or sparked that I want to be a reader, I want to be a writer, I want to be a teacher, sorry?
I can't remember one, but there was one when I read when I was really young called Sloppy Kisses, which is about a pig who, it's a picture book. Surprise, surprise, I write them. And it was about this pig who thinks that kissing is only for children. So when she goes to this new school and her mum wants to kiss her goodbye, she's like, no, thank you. And then she realizes that she feels very lonely because she's rejecting the love of her family to seem cool for her friends. And then she's like, no, actually, I want cuddles and kisses, and goes back and gets them. And I think that story always stayed with me. And somewhere I wanted to inspire that kind of like love and warmth and like care in someone else. And I know that's why I initially
And this was the
wanted
pig.
to start writing. This was a pig.
It's a high-level
So
pig,
it's
very
a
emotionally
very cute
available pig.
Yes, yeah.
That wasn't the catalyst to your writing career? Or it kind of just inspired it?
I would say that was the catalyst to my,
So what was the first thing you wrote then?
Oh, I've always
Ever?
Ever. It was a narrative poem called The Sound from the Lake in year 7.
Sounds beautiful.
Thank you. And school used to make us enter these writing competitions. They were called Creative Young Writers. And anyone that entered it would get published in a book. But the fact that you were published in a book back then was a big deal. Yeah, and we were really excited. And I wrote this. I remember I was at dinner at my aunt's house, and it was all adults and me. And I was so bored that I went off into her room, and I started writing this. And I wrote this poem, and I came out being like, oh, Mum, I've written something. And she was like, it's not terrible. Quite good.
It's readable,
Yeah, and then so I submitted that for the first year. And then that kind of like started everything, I guess.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So what was the next step? Because I guess as a writer, we've had writers and authors on the show before, and they said the most overwhelming moment in that experience is seeing your book actually published and getting to this phase. But what takes you from that phase of writing in year 7 till this phase where you're now publisher not just of 1, 2, but 3 children's books, which my son actually enjoys.
Thank you. That's very sweet of you and your son. So I was terrible at science in school. Any STEM subject, really not for me. I was very, very interested in seeing how other people lived their lives. Words have always just had this very odd hold over me, and I think I loved reading so much throughout growing up that there was no other choice besides working with words. So therefore being an actor and being a writer makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So other people consider careers in other things like law and music, and there was just no That just wasn't an option.
And
for
your
me.
parents were cool with that?
Yeah, my parents didn't have a choice, but yeah. I'm also a twin, and my brother is the doctor. So
Oh, so he's took
they're proud of
he
that
took one
child.
for the team.
Yeah. And I can be creative.
That's you as a parent, you always want one to do the academic one. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And it was always a clear split. Rushad was very good at science. I was very good at English, art, drama, all of that kind of stuff. So I think they knew.
They leaned into your
they
strengths.
knew. Yeah. And for a while, my mum was like, no, but don't be an actor, be a teacher. And I was like, okay. So I did both part-time, but you can't do either part-time because both are very full-time jobs. So I quit teaching just before the pandemic. And I was like, I'm going to be an actor. And then there was no acting happening in the pandemic.
Yeah, because you're in a lockdown,
Yeah, no theatres open. So then I, because I was a teacher, I was thinking a lot about how my kids were making sense of this very odd world where you can't see your grandparents, you can't hug your friends. And like any English teacher, I was like, I will write a story about this. And that's how I went back to writing picture books and writing these like short narrative poem stories. And that's how Germ Academy came about, which was my first book. And that was very much right place, right time. It was a pandemic book by an unknown author. So usually at any other time, it would have taken a good year and a half of cold calling, sending emails, that. But I think because it was so timely, and credit to myself, as an English teacher, you're good at self-editing your work.
So
still sent it out, got lots of rejections, but then some people liked it, and then that's how I kind of got back into it. And I was like, actually, I love doing this. And writing is wonderful, but reading in a bookstore to other kids and interacting with them and having them bring your words to life and do activities based on the book, I think that is even bigger of a joy.
Yeah, as a teacher as well, especially because it's kind of like that the idea came from you. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's not kind of. I think I have my aunt's a teacher, and sometimes she feels like she's been told what to impart on the children.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
So I was very lucky in my school. I went to a very small school in Bombay, and I went back to teach at the same school that I studied at.
Oh, wow.
Which was so nice because lots of teachers that are still there are teachers that taught me.
Wow.
And it's a very, very progressive, very holistic education kind of school where they were like, Ria, you know what you're doing. This is where you have to get to by the end of the year. Do what you want.
That's amazing.
Which was really nice because growing up, as I said, I read all these pale male stale / white books. And I was so aware of wanting to create a curriculum for my year that wasn't dull, wasn't boring. When you make me read Romeo and Juliet in year 8, when boys and girls hate each other, no one wants to read it.
I don't want to hear about the Capulets and Montague.
Exactly. Year 11, when they all fancy each other, they're like, yes, we get it now.
Yeah, there's that connection.
So it's about So it was very nice. It was very nice.
So what does your curriculum look like? And if you were going to go back to a young Ria, what would you put in that curriculum, literature-wise?
Ooh, so my curriculum, I don't teach anymore, but when I did, it was Salman Rushdie, lots of Indian homegrown writers, Carol Ann Duffy, John Aggard, I love Benjamin Zephaniah.
Oh, yeah.
Work that makes the kids interested in literature.
And in the world as well. I feel like those authors are very much like relatable in the sense that they write about things that you see day to day.
Exactly. Whereas if you're asking me to walk through the woods on a snowy evening, it's like, where in India is there snow? So what is happening here? So I tried to make it as diverse and international as possible. Also just to see hear different voices, see different perspectives. That whole wonderful books as windows, mirrors, and sliding doors to the world kind of thing coming in. When I was young, what would I want in my curriculum is a very good question. I think we didn't have enough picture books growing up. I think we didn't have, there are very good Indian authors who write now for like years 7 to 15, whose books, if they existed back then,
would have resonated. Do you want to name someone?
Oh, Payal Kapadia is very good. Shabnam Meenwala is very good.
What are their books called? If you have to recommend one.
Payal Kapadia has written something called Wish I Was a Writer. And it's like the whole book is a pun on the writing process for this young 12-year-old girl. Excellent. Shabnam has written Murder at Daisy Apartments. She is amazing. She was a parent at my school.
Wait, what school did you go to? It sounds like you went to Harvard and everyone just graduating to build companies, like become writers. What was going on?
Just a very arts-minded, cute, small thing. She wrote a book in the pandemic as well about a murder during the lockdown and how these people stuck in their flats figure out who the murderer was.
That's an amazing premise.
I'll give you one.
Yeah, I'm sold. Yeah. No, we need to get the store to stock it. That's an amazing premise.
Please, more Indian authors. That would be amazing.
So writing this during the pandemic, at what point did you kind of feel like, I have something on my hands? How long did it take you to write?
So the first draft took it was very quick. It took 3 days, but I didn't have an ending. I just knew what my overall message was. And because my brother is the doctor, he said...
A reference.
Yes, he was like, kids need to learn about hygiene, but they don't need to be told, wash your hands, stay clean. How do you do it in another way? So this book, I was kind of like, I want kids to understand the importance of hygiene without being didactic.
Oh,
I knew that. Yeah. I didn't know how to get there. So I wrote half of this first in 4 days, and then the ending took about 2 weeks to figure out. Why are endings always so hard?
But that's the beauty. I remember someone saying your ending makes or breaks the book. You know what I mean? Because that's when someone decides whether they're going to read your next one.
Very true. Yeah. Very true. Sucks when you don't know what that ending is for a long time.
So then you made characters out of the kind. Oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah. And then I reached out on Instagram, because we were all stuck indoors, asking for illustrators. I still didn't know I had anything on my hands, but I wanted someone to bring these words to life, because I think, especially in picture books, half the story is the words and half the story is the pictures, and it's always the blending of the two.
Yeah.
So anyway, spoke to someone online. She said yes, she'd do 2 full-page spreads. And then once she did that and was able to understand what I saw and hear, but absolutely cannot draw to save my life, I was like, I think we're on to something.
Oh, so you had to find an illustrator yourself?
Everything myself.
I never knew that. So in picture books, it's actually a genuine collaboration between the illustrator and the writer. I thought the publisher would just assign an illustrator to a project.
Depends on what country you're doing it. So I think here the publisher assigns the illustrator, unless it's an established illustrator who says, established author who says, I want to work with an established illustrator, and then they come together. But because I was a first-time author, I had no idea what I was doing. I was kind of like, let me just be super keen. Let me get everything. I'll write it. I'll have the illustration. And it worked out in my favor this time. But it was all us, and then we sent it across.
So then your illustrator has gone on to like help you collaborate on other projects then?
So thank you for asking.
Yeah.
We've just signed a 4-book deal with HarperCollins.
Congratulations.
So thank you. So this illustrator, Shaina, who's wonderful, is doing those 4 books as well.
Nice. So talk to me about the process of the other 2 books as well.
So these are published by a really small indie publishing house in Bombay called Daffodil Lane.
Okay then.
And they have an in-house illustrator. So this was a very different process. This, I sent the manuscript in, sent in a brief of like, this is how I imagine the book, and then the illustrator did it.
Oh.
Yeah, very
which
different.
do you prefer?
Are you getting me in trouble?
No, which process do you prefer? Not which illustrator, which process do you prefer?
I prefer any illustrator as long as we can work together.
That's a very political answer.
Thank you so
that.
much.
Great answer, you navigated that well.
It's also tough because the minute you write it, you have to give up your words. You have to let an illustrator understand it how they want. And somewhere that control has to just be let go of a little bit. But as long as the illustrator is open to blending both minds, I love working with them. If someone was stubborn and was like, no, this is how I see it, I'm like, well.
Yeah, it's going to be a big problem.
Then it gets tricky.
The thing I find interesting actually about children's books, I feel like there's always an educational element and you're always trying to reach a certain goal. So in your experience, what kind of book inspired you, you know what I mean, as like not growing up, but just what book inspires you, you know?
Lots of books by Oliver Jeffers really inspire me. He writes picture books and he always, yes, they are educational, but more than that, they have any book that has heart and any book that is warm and makes you feel a little bit fuzzy is inspirational. And he does that so well. And the first book of his I read was called Heart in a Bottle, and it's about this girl losing her grandpa. And he just symbolized that by the grandpa being sat on his like wonderful plush red chair, and one day that chair was empty. And just how is the brain that good at conveying something so big, so simply? And I think that was like, I really want to be able to convey big ideas in small stories.
I think that is the beauty. Sometimes I read a book to my son. There's another book with a similar narrative. It's about a boy and the tree. And it's basically like it's following his journey, and then eventually the tree becomes a swing, and like as he gets
The
older.
Giving Tree.
Oh, is that what it's
Shel
called?
Silverstein.
Yes, yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I read it and I was like, oh my god, this shit is so deep. Like, you know, I'm looking at my son like, you don't even get like this is deep.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love that idea, like you're saying, being able to like translate complex subjects through such like small. Is that what it's called? The Giving Tree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I think it's a very
It
good
is.
book. On the other end, talking about adult literature,
Yes.
which books don't you enjoy so much? You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of guests kind of like tiptoe around this question.
I do not like pretentious, self-indulgent. There's this woman called Otessa Montcheg, I think her name is, and I read a book of hers called My Year of Rest and Relaxation, because it's very millennial. And it's very like, oh, it struggles so much, and like quite self-indulgent. In
Wait,
this
did you bring this book
I
here,
did,
actually? Yeah.
I did.
So what is your issue?
Just look at the cover. I'm just going to show you the cover. That is how I felt reading the book the whole time. It is just about this woman who, oh my God, so much rage. Basically, she's very rich, very white, very waspy, and has this huge college inheritance. I'm still telling her. And is just like wallowing in this like self-pity and self-doubt and like apathy. So she takes prescription meds, drinks a lot, sleeps all day, goes to the bodega to buy coffee, and that's literally what the book is about. And I'm just like, get a grip. Just get a grip.
So
No,
my question is, what made you finish it then?
I have not finished
Oh,
it.
okay.
I have not. We have abandoned this one. But other books I don't like. I really respect Sally Rooney for what she's doing. I really do.
Yeah, killing it, yeah.
She is killing it, but why does she not use punctuation marks in her writing? Why? As an English teacher, that's a big gripe. Just put speech marks.
So I thought, when I first read one of her books and it was like that, I thought, it's a stylistic approach.
Sure. Yes, it is.
I can't justify it. I can't understand it either. I read the funniest thread on Reddit where someone was like, I'm reading her book, but I don't know where to stop and where to start and which character's talking and which one of those.
This is me. I was that Reddit person.
No, it is an interesting way for her to like express herself, you know what I mean? But yeah, I found it very strange that even though I enjoyed the book, that the publisher let her get away with that.
And encouraged it, because that's what's happened in all the other books
subsequent
as well.
books. Okay, I haven't read a subsequent. I've read Normal People.
That was the best one.
Oh yeah,
Conversations
I
with
that.
Friends was fine. I just don't get the hype. I just don't get the hype.
It's a big hype as well.
It's a huge hype. So Beautiful World, Where Are You is sitting on my shelf, and I'm just a bit scared.
to get there.
Yeah, I'm like, will I be wasting my time? I'm not sure.
Okay, so actually, now that we're on the subject of adult fiction, let's actually move over to there where I wanted to talk about a little bit more about some of your other influences.
Perfect.
You can leave that book here, you don't have to drag it. We can leave it in the store if you want. I'm going to go straight into it. What's the most romantic book you've ever read?
Ooh.
Set that one up nicely, didn't we?
Seven Husbands. Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
It
But I'm
is
going to read it.
Stunning.
I'm going to read it.
Really
I like romance novels. I'm going to read it.
And it's a very unexpected, I'm not going to say any more, but it's not the romance that you expect.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like love for the self as well in this. And she's very forgiving with herself, which is all I will say.
Yeah.
Really excellent.
I'm gonna pick this copy up today because somewhat, like I said, every book I recommended TikTok I actually enjoyed. And you saw Tammy's episode.
Yes.
And in the episode, she was talking about this book, and I said I'm gonna read it. At the time, I was reading War and Peace, which took me forever to finish.
It's a very different kind of book.
It took me forever to finish, but I finished it now. So
Well done.
Now I've been liberated from the kind of like
Heavy reading.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now I can you get what I'm
Enjoy
saying?
this.
I
You
might-
can also spark notes. War and Peace for me, because I haven't read it.
Oh,
So I don't know. I don't know what happens.
yeah, it's a commitment. I'd say it's a commitment.
There's some war, but then it ends with peace.
I don't even know if it ends with peace.
Oh,
It ends with pieces of peace.
okay.
That's a little metaphor. You like what I did there? Pieces
Yes,
of peace.
I did. Is it
Yeah.
worth a read?
It is.
Okay.
Surprisingly, it's very difficult to read, but when I finished it, I actually ended up missing it.
Okay. How old were you when you started?
I finished it like 3 months ago.
16.
I finished it 3 months ago.
Okay.
Literally.
Okay.
Like, literally. It was like, and when I finished the book looked like it'd been chewed, it'd been torn, and I actually went through the experience
Yeah.
of living in Russia at that time.
Okay.
It was, and it was quite emotional. What was the book you read that's made you cry?
If This Is a Man by Primo Levi, which I read on my course. It's about an Italian Jew, and he talks about his time at a concentration camp. But in the most frank and almost detached way. It's just beautiful. And he obviously survived, unlike many others, and it was just stunning. Really, really sad to read. That made me cry like sad tears. And then Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton made me cry very happy tears. And it's such a lovely celebration of sisterhood and female friendships and navigating your way through your 20s. And yeah, just really resonated.
Oh, I'll check. Have you read A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
Not.
Amazing. One of the better books I've read. Very short, but similar. He was in a concentration camp and during the Holocaust, and obviously he survived as well. But his perspective on how we came out of it and how we views the world afterwards, it's amazing. Like, it's really, really. No.
I'm gonna take that.
Yeah, please do take that.
I'll read it.
And it's funny because we had guests on the show before, and obviously, like I said, Tammy was a fan of The Seven Husbands. But also we had Alexa, who loved.
Oh,
loved Louise Renison.
I love her. So again, when I was growing up, I never read Louise Renison, but I just finished my master's in children's literature, so I've had to do, and I'm writing a middle grade book in the format of a diary. So anyway, this was great research. So I picked it up thinking, I'll find some useful things. She's got 10 in this series.
Yeah, she's got, yeah.
I have read all 10.
No way.
Multiple
No.
times. She is fantastic. God, her ability to like capture the voice of this 14-year-old British girl, but also universal girl is just, and she's so funny. She's so funny. And you know when you try to be funny, but that's not funny?
Yeah. Funny,
She's not even trying.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, would recommend.
Okay,
to a grown man.
I will take it.
You must.
I love seeing like literature, like these kind of books, because the letters are kind of big as well.
Yeah.
So I know that it's not going to be War and
It's no
Peace.
War and Peace.
It was like literally like this, and it was 1,400 pages long in some capacity.
That is a commitment.
Yeah. But I felt like I read it because it was a bit of vanity, because I wanted to read it, but also because I'm doing the show and I want to let people know that I'm trying, you know what I mean? Have you ever read a book to impress someone?
Yes, that Otessa one that we spoke about earlier.
Oh, really?
I read it to impress a friend who's also a writer, but he's an adult writer, and he writes very much about this. Oh, everything sucks. I had a cup of black coffee, then I put in my AirPods, and I started typing on my Mac, and I'm like, and because he kept asking me, he's like, what are you reading? And I'm like, about a 14-year-old girl's diary. And I was like, next time I need to have something intellectual to say. So I read it. It's not for me.
It's not,
It's not for me.
Okay, so what did you recommend to him then?
I think I recommended, and I knew he wouldn't read it, but there's another book very in the same ilk as Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo called City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. And that is about, there's definitely a theme here, but it's set in the 1940s in America. It's about this girl who goes to, a very privileged girl who goes to live with her aunt that runs a very rundown theater. And it's about how this whole different world opens up to her where people actually have to hustle to get work, and like the seedier side of glamour, and how she's 19 when the book starts, it's a bit of a coming of age story, and how she learns all these lessons that she wouldn't have learned in her, in her normal life.
I think it's interesting. I think a big responsibility of writers is to expose people to other worlds.
Yes.
So in that sense, are all your books based in India then? Because I mean, it's a bit ambiguous, but is that inherently like what you're trying to portray? Especially with the one you're writing.
The one that I'm writing is set in India.
Set in India, yeah.
And it's kind of like a love letter to Louise Renison, but in the 21st century.
Yeah.
This hasn't aged well.
Oh really?
They use
they're kids in it.
They're kids, and they're like, oh, you're such a lezo as an insult. And I'm like, that's just not an insult. That's like very encouraged and supported in 2022. So things have not aged well. But it's kind of like a modern day adaptation of what she would be like if she was in India for my middle grade book. But my picture books are set, Germ Academy is in a made up world. It's set in a Germ school. And the animal books are set in fantasy jungles, but the books I write with characters are usually set in India because it's where I'm most familiar with. It's what I think the world needs more of. It's stories that I want to tell.
Yeah, so the coriander in the sugar pot, that's in India.
Yes, and that has two mothers. It's a two-mother family.
I thought, okay, I didn't realize that. So I got at the end, but I didn't realize. I thought, is that her sister? Is that aunt?
Well, we have to leave it open to interpretation because our government is not very LGBT friendly.
Okay.
But it's important to introduce visually these kinds of concepts to kids who have never had books like this growing up. They don't exist. Nothing besides a heterosexual family of one girl, one boy, mum and dad exists. So just whatever I can do to widen that. And
actually, on that subject of censorship, in India, what is that kind of culture like in terms of like what you can write and what you can't write about? And you mentioned Salman Rushdie earlier on, which I think is quite a poignant like example of like how writing can really be dangerous in some cultures.
Yeah, especially whatever happened to him recently.
Yeah, of course.
So Salman Rushdie is fantastic. He wrote it's not a children's book, but it was a story for his son called Haroon and the Sea of Stories, which I love because it's an allegory of his fatwa, and he's trying to explain how, the whole book is about censorship, and how his voice has been silenced in a way, but he writes it through the metaphor of this boy called Haroon, whose dad is a storyteller and suddenly loses all his words. So Haroon has to go to the land of Gup, and Gup is, in Hindi you say gup shup as like chit chat. So he goes to the land of Gup, and there's this kahani, which means story in Hindi, Palace of Kahani, and there's this princess Bath Cheat. So all the names of the characters are puns on words that have to do with freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And the villains in the story is the land of Chup, and Chup means silence. So really, really, really cleverly done, and he did this quite early on in his career. And it's a book that I taught to year 7 on the surface level, and then allegorically to year 12 when I was teaching in my school. So it works on multiple levels as well, which I thought was really, really good. Back to what can be written and what can't be written. Indian writers who have representation abroad, who are bigger, can still challenge things, but the Indian government is just a little bit fanatic right now. And it is, without them saying you can't do it, the threat of something happening to you, something happening to your family, you being charged with sedition, this, that, the other, does stop Indian voices from perhaps being as outspoken as they should be right now. Shit's going down in our country. Shit is going down.
No, I mean, it's crazy because I don't know, comparatively, like, cinema is huge over there, you know what I mean?
Yes, but have you, still, no one in cinema there can criticize the government as openly as they should, because everything is dirty money. So even when Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, passed not very nice laws against the Muslims, no Bollywood actor spoke out on Twitter, not one, because you can't. I mean, you absolutely can and you should, but it's like, are they bought over? You just don't know. It's
You're going to
just a bit
experience the
murky.
consequences of it. Yeah. That's really interesting. You're kind of dabbling in both fields then. Is acting still like kind of like a primary focus, or are you just full author mode?
I think right now, author mode. I was doing acting back home, but it's a bit tricky to try and break into 2 freelance professions in a new country. So I would love to. I haven't done any since coming, but I would love to.
Why London?
I think 2 reasons. My boyfriend lives here and we were doing long distance, but that is not why I moved. It was beneficial.
It's not a bad thing. I respect if you move for love. I'm a romantic myself.
I partially moved for love, but also I think they had the best course. I came for my master's last year, so Goldsmiths. It was either London or Canada, but Canada was a lot more theoretical and didn't let me write, whereas Goldsmiths was like, you will have to write 4,000 words every week. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
It's nice to be told you have a deadline.
Yeah, 100%.
And then, are you the same?
Yeah, I agree. To be honest, I'm behind on my deadline at the moment with my agent. But, you know, like, it's better to have, like, a goal. And I normally set calendar reminders for myself and be like, by this day, this should be done. And generally, whenever I do that, I normally do get it done by that day.
Fab. Can you set me calendar deadlines as well? Because I procrastinated. I graduated in September, and
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. But I have not written as much as I should. The day comes and goes, and I'm like, oh.
That's the life of author. You're gaining inspiration.
True.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I feel like 3 books is quite a heavy load, or you don't feel like it. In the space of how much time?
2 years.
2 years. That's. I mean, I don't know about children's book, but 3 books is quite. Or is it?
It's not bad. It's not bad. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's quite a heavy load, and you got 4 more coming, and then.
I have.
How far are you from finishing the middle grade one?
I'm halfway through. So that's going to be that has to be a next year project. And please hold me accountable to this. Bring me back next year and be like, Ria.
100%. Next time it's going to be published, it's going to be here somewhere, you know what I mean? And it's funny because I remember when I was showing you all the books that I'm using for...
writing.
Writing. And like every writer's got like a stack of books about writing. And we can read and stuff, but actually sitting down to write is probably
the hardest thing.
That's actually the main challenge.
Stephen King, I read his book, he talks about how you have to just do it for 2 hours every morning. And I'm like, define have to. Who is holding me to this? My dissertation did it and I was like, bam, I've written 20,000 words. And since then it's like, yeah, I just need to get back on it.
Your dissertation was the book you're working on, though, right? Which kind of works out.
Exactly.
That's really, really
Two
cool.
birds, one
Exactly,
stone.
that's clever. You just need to get on pay for another master's course then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, easy.
Yeah,
Can you lend me 15
of course,
grand?
100, I got
Thank
you.
you.
I got you.
Oh, guys, he's the best.
That's actually my, what's it called? My gratitude for you coming on the show. Just
Appreciate
15K.
it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'll get all my other master's friends to just line up behind me.
We'll make that happen. You picked up this book actually, because I was going to ask you, what 2 books would you recommend to someone who's watching? But you picked up this book. I've seen this book everywhere, and I must say the cover is compelling. But I don't know anyone that's actually read it. And recommended
Really?
it. No.
Ooh, amazing, amazing. I seem to have picked all of these books of women going through their struggles set in the past. So there is a bit of a theme there. But this is, so I loved it for 2 reasons. Bonnie Garmus was on a Curtis Brown talent writing program. She's, I think, in her early 60s, and this is her first book. Wow. So I love that it just stands for the belief of you're never too old to do what you want.
Amazing.
She's put she's a dedicated rower. She works in chemistry, and a lot of that has kind of fed into the main character. But it's a little bit utopian in how this woman lives and doesn't experience problems. Just takes things for granted. She does go through a lot, and it's wonderful. It's just wonderful. She's a strong, bad bitch. She's a great mum. She's this woman fighting in this very male, sciencey world to just be her most authentic self. Everyone's trying to like define her, sexualize her, make her do womanhood in the way they want, and she's like, I'm going to do it for me, and I'm going to do it for other women in the country. So I would very much recommend this.
Oh, actually, yeah, you sold it to me.
Yeah, it's very good. So I'd recommend that as my adult recommendation.
Yeah.
And for kids, I would recommend something called The Day the Crayons Quit, again by Oliver Jeffers.
Man.
Have you read that?
No, because
your son would love it.
It was in the kids section, so we could have actually found it there.
We can bring it and then do a plug at the end. But it is so funny.
Yeah.
It's so funny. He gives life to all this box of crayons, and each crayon has a list of why they're not coming home for Christmas. So White is like, you never use me, because the page is always white, so I'm done. And then Blue says, I feel very overused. You only use me as the sea and the sky. Yeah. But what about X, Y, Z?
Oh, I like it.
Why can't skin be blue? And it's just so...
Who's the writer? Oliver.
Oliver Jeffers is the illustrator. He's Irish, but now based in Brooklyn. And the writer is a man called Drew DeWalt. And then, so it's The Day the Crayons Quit, and then the sequel is The Day When the Crayons Returned. It is right there.
Oh, wow. So that's why you thank you so much. Yeah. So I'm taking this one for my son.
So fun.
Then.
You should.
Okay.
I would say take both, but that's better.
Yeah?
Yeah, really, really
I'll
fun.
take both of them.
What's his name?
It's Nazareth.
Okay, I'll do a little, Dear Nazareth.
If you do that,
This
it will
book is
blow
for
his
you.
mind. It will blow his mind. Ria, thank you so much for your
So
time.
fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, man. I really, really
This was lovely, and I hope he enjoys
Oh, no, it sounds amazing. Thank you
all
very
of
much.
these.